Make yourself at home. Make yourself at home. We're about to begin. Make yourself at home. And first and foremost, if you would be so kind, because this is a nice, relaxing session for tonight, if you would be so kind, first and foremost, to put away laptops, silent cell phones, and to give tonight's speakers who are here, they've done a lot to be here, because, we all got things to do, but we can't thank you enough for all the panelists for being here for tonight. And so we have a wonderful event tonight, and this is a career panel, and we did this last year. And the reason why we want to do, we're doing a career panel is for a couple of reasons. Number one, generally speaking, from our experience, we've seen a lot of students very underinformed about their options. We've seen a lot of students say, I'm a computer science student, it looks like my only career options are, the usual suspect of places, and I have to be a hacker. That's generally the sentiment out there, and that's not true at all. And we want to provide you with the best all the options possible that fits you, and also what's best for you for down the road. That's number one. I'm sure the speakers will say a lot more about that. But another reason why we have this event is because of something that we're trying to do, and that is to get you informed and exposed to what our alumni have been up to. And they've been there's very little opportunities that, in the past, the alumni get together and students get to meet the alumni. And so for you, this is an opportunity to see who our alumni, some of our alumni are, what they have done, and perhaps it gives you some some thought. You're going to be in this position in the near future, and perhaps, hopefully one day in the future, you'll be up here and giving back as well. So without much ado, it is now perhaps what I'll do, I'm going to turn the mic over, and I'm going to turn the mic over to each and one of our panelists to introduce themselves.
Hey everyone, my name is Alden. I graduated class of 2013 in computer science. So I haven't been, it's basically 2 years out for me from school. Right now I work for a startup called Drift. We were out in Kendall Square, and we make software for businesses to communicate with their customers. We're a teeny little startup. We basically are not even a year old so far. I was the second employee to get hired there, and I mostly do engineering mixed with some product development, mixed with some leading a team, and lots of other hats because it's a startup.
Hi everyone, my name is Soha Hassoun. I'm the chair for the Department of Computer Science here at Tufts. And I guess I'm representing more the PhD and academic career. I've been at Tufts for 17 years, but I've done an internship at IBM Austin Research Labs, not an internship, but a leave is what we call it. I've also done a leave at a startup company in Waltham that is still in startup mode after several years. And before I went to grad school, I actually worked as a circuit designer, a processor designer, and I had the pleasure of working on some of the fastest computers in the world at the time. So.
My name is Bill Ingeberg. I am a technical manager and software engineer at TripAdvisor. So I'm here to represent sort of software engineering in the corporate space. And I've been in the industry for about 14 years now. I graduated from Tufts in 2001 with a CS degree. And
I am Patrick. I kind of in between, so I got a PhD, so I can talk to that too. But I'm also at a startup, so I've done both, or I'm doing both. Graduated in 05 from Tufts, CS and IR. Actually, I started IR. I knew I came to Tufts like I'm going to do IR. I'm going to go into business. That's what I want to do. I didn't want to take calc, whatever it was. So someone take CS, Comp 15, I think it was. So that's easier than math. I liked it and ended up getting a CS major and went to grad school for CS, so backfired a little bit. But yes, that's me. I'm also at a small startup, more on the medical side of things. I was actually also employed to sign the papers first, but started on the nights and weekends after the other guy, so I'm either 1 or 2, depending on what you look at. But yeah, so that's it.
So we have a fun set of questions. And so the first question is, well, you've all done very, very, very well in your fields. You've all done very, very well in your field. How did you get to where you are today?
So I think it goes back to, the general theme is a combination of finding cool opportunities, doing things at those opportunities which gave me experience that I could show, and then going and learning a different particular technology, and then being able to take that new skill and some other thing I can show from the previous work and showing that to a next little small startup, and they would get interested in me, and then I could go there and repeat that same process. So I started that right after my freshman year. I went and did some iPhone development, and I didn't know anything about iPhone development, but this guy had heard that I could do Android development, which I also didn't know very much about. And he was like, hey, do you want to make an iPhone app for me? And so I taught myself iPhone development and did that. And then since then, it's basically been kind of similar stories to that at another small company, and then another small company, and then with one little detour where that third company got bought by Twitter, and then that's actually where I went and worked right after school. That was a really interesting chance to learn about what a bigger company is like, and get some cool scaling challenges, because they have some very large amounts of information there. And then I wanted to do something smaller and be involved in something smaller again, so I left and now I'm at another startup.
So I'm a little bit older than Alden. So my story, I have 2 versions of the story. One of them is the inspiring, kind of thing, and one of them is the real story. So I'll start with the inspiring version. And it's actually what I live, probably what I've been living for the last decade. I want to wake up every day and I want to be incredibly excited about what I do for a living. Some days I'm laying in bed and I'm so excited about some research topic that I'm working on, I just want to get up in the morning and I want to work on it. And that's really what I've worked on all my life. I wanted to get to a place where I am incredibly excited about where I want to be. So right now what I do as an academic, of course I teach classes, or some classes, because I'm the chair, I have administrative duties. And then I also do academic research. And that means that I think up ideas, some of them are really good and some of them are not. And then I write a lot of proposals to the National Science Foundation and the National Institute of Health and lots of other private organizations. And I say, hey, I have this really, really cool idea. I want to figure out how the gut microbiota transfers metabolites and da-da-da, da-da-da. I make up a story. I really make up a story. And here's a bunch of data that kind of supports that this is a good idea. And then I end up having graduate students that work for me, and they want to do research. They're curious. They want to know answers to things that nobody has figured out. And that really drives me and makes me very happy. So that's probably the last decade of my life. I kind of finally figured out where I want to be or what I want to do when I grow up. And I'll have to admit, when I was about where you are now, I would go home every semester to my mom and I'd say, I was an electrical engineering major because there was no computer science at the time where I was. And I'm like, I hate this major. I hate this major. And it's funny. I kind of would go back and I'm like, what can I be? Oh, I could be a mechanical engineering. That sounded like a horrible fate. Or a civil engineer like my dad, and that was even worse. So then I was like, I'm just going to, there was something in it, but I wasn't quite sure what it is. And then I went to grad school at MIT, and I took the first class on very large-scale integration, which is designing chips that go into your processors. And I've never fell in love with anything more than designing circuits. So that's what I did for a long while. Then I went back and got a PhD, and then here I am here. So.
So let's see, I started out coming to Tufts through the liberal arts program, and I thought I wanted to do biology. I decided I didn't want to be a doctor or work in a lab, and there was no such thing as bioinformatics at the time. So I sort of floundered for a semester or two trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And incidentally, I also didn't want to take more math. I had it with nightly problem sets. I said, this is for the birds. And so I took my first formal CS class, and I had always been into computers. So I sort of fell in love with CS and, took some more courses and, caught up a little bit here and there on the prerequisite math courses. So the evading the math and problem sets backfired. But came out of it with a CS degree. And when I graduated in 2001, the market sucked. The dot-com bubble burst, there were no jobs. I was very glad I didn't take up my internship company on their offer to fully employ me if I would drop out of school. And so I did consulting, web development, basically anything that I could do or learn for 6 months or a year, something like that. And then I worked at a small company and quickly fell in sort of over my head, but learned a lot and gradually found myself sort of excelling in that department. It was very small, sort of like a startup, but it was an established company, made a lot of friends. In the end, I really figured out that I stayed too long. I was there for 7 years, straight out of school. Learning had sort of started to stagnate. And so I reflected for a little bit and I thought, well, what do I need to learn? What are my goals? What do I want to do? And so I thought about that and sort of decided, okay, well, I need to sort of bolster my back-end experience. I need a little bit of enterprise experience. So I left my current company. I went and did that for a couple of years. When I had that under control, I said, all right, well, now I can sort of get the job that I want. And so then I started applying at the companies you might think of, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Twitters, the TripAdvisors, and of course you might guess I wound up at TripAdvisor. And there were a lot of things that I liked about that particular opportunity, but in the end I had some choices and I chose to go there. And so I've been at TripAdvisor for about 4 years now, and I've always sort of been interested in not just technology for technology's sake. I was never really sort of the alpha nerd in the computer science group who wanted to explore every vulnerability in the computer systems and be sort of the hacker in the traditional sense of the word. I always liked solving problems with technology, and so I also gravitated towards solving business problems with technology, and so I sort of took on more leadership opportunities and gradually began managing people in addition to doing software engineering. So that's what I do now. I manage teams and also write code.
So I sort of started my background earlier, but so class of 05. Again, so I started IR, then did CS, because I didn't want to take math. Then when I graduated, so senior year, I was applying for jobs. I was applying for either doing the banking things, like, okay, I'll go banking. So I grew up in Japan. I lived there for 16 years. So I had a banking job in Japan because I speak Japanese and I live in there. And I also applied to graduate school for computer science. I happened to get into MIT. I said, you know what? I can always work for a bank. They're going to be there for a while, but I'm only going to get to MIT once because they're only going to make that mistake once. So I decided to go in there instead. So I went there for CS, so I did computer science there. So I was here, for my senior year I started going into comp bio, so with Lenore Cowan. And then so I went to MIT, did computer science there, and did bioinformatics there. So my stuff that I was doing there was machine learning and kind of statistical data mining type stuff for cancer research. And what I learned there is I don't like being told what to do, which is sort of why people usually go into PhD programs. When you do your own research, it's sort of like, I want to be able to do my own thing. That's kind of what you want to learn. You have this problem you like to solve, and I want to know the answer to it. And you get this bug of just saying, like, I want to get this done, I want to do it. And I'm going to do it even if someone tells me I'm wrong. Otherwise, if you stop right at the beginning, research wouldn't happen. So after that, I did my postdoc, and I was applying for jobs after that. Cause it's like, oh, you know what? I've had enough with research. I want to do something else. I want to get some real-world experience of kind of building stuff. So the thing I didn't like about research too much was that you do stuff and you write a paper, and that was kind of where it ended. It was great, it was a lot of fun, but you're like, the leading edge of science doesn't actually impact the real world until 5-10 years later, when someone takes that, you know, research paper you wrote and actually does something with it. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to actually try to go the other side instead of doing something. So I was applying for jobs, and same thing, the Googles, the Twitters, all that kind of stuff. And my postdoc advisor, who's a Harvard Medical School professor, learned that I was looking for a job. And he's like, you know what, I'm starting a company. Do you want to join? And I was like, okay. What do you guys do? Or what are you planning on doing? And so basically we talked a bit, and basically what it came down to me was I wanted to be at a place where I could impact what is happening at the company, which again, if you're there from day one, it's sort of, you can help manage the business, help grow the business. You're basically in the driver's seat with everyone else, but you get to solve interesting problems. So that kind of was a perfect mix for me, and that's kind of, yeah, my story for now.
So, what type of personality is ideal, to be in your area of work? So I'm going to give this a shot.
Personality. If you want to do research, and you could comment on this, and you already did in some ways, you have to be persistent and you have to be consistent. That means, you will have setbacks. Sometimes you will work on something for a year, and then you realize that it wasn't quite, or it didn't go the way that you thought it was. You're trying to solve a problem, maybe it turns out to be too hard. Or you try to solve a problem, and then you make good progress, but there's another problem that pops up, and you're like, I don't know how to solve this. So there's lots of ups and downs, so you need to have a kind of a thicker skin, a more persistent personality. It's like, okay, I submitted the paper and it got rejected, and or I submitted, what's it? Never. Yeah, right. We submit to conferences that only 30% of papers that get submitted get accepted. So it's really competitive to get your work published. Funding rates are in the order of sometimes 5%, 7%. In a good year, it might be 12%. So it's really competitive to get this money. So you have a little bit of a kind of thicker skin. And then I love that part about it. It's not like I like to be rejected, but when I get rejected, I'm like more driven. I'm like, okay, so what is it that they didn't like about this idea, or what is it that made this idea not attractive or not appropriate, and then I go back and I spin my wheels and I think about it, and then I like to turn things, sideways and upside down and kind of try to figure out how to do it. So lots of persistence, and willing to be in a PhD program for at least 4 or 5 years. That's the average across the U.S. as a PhD is roughly 5 years, and it's a big, huge commitment. It's not like a med school commitment. It's not like a law school is like 3 years, med school is like 8, 9, 10, 11, I don't know, long time. But a PhD is a significant chunk of your life that you will dedicate to research.
So I think a lot of different personality types can be successful doing software engineering, software development out in sort of corporate or business America. But what I really like to see is a person who is passionate about what they're doing, passionate about solving problems. And I think it's really incumbent upon you to figure out what it is that you're passionate about. If you find that thing, regardless of whether it's a particular field that one of us is representing, or a particular industry, or even a specific problem, if you can find that thing, everything else is going to take care of itself. So passion is really important, and that's going to be the primary thing that is going to make you successful. Other than that, specifically for myself, I like to see someone who is able to communicate well and work with people, sort of lack of ego, willingness to accept other people's ideas, because all of us have particular ways that we'd approach the problem, and there's no one way that's necessarily correct or will necessarily work. So being able to evaluate, even if you don't accept the other person's idea, think about it and incorporate some of those ideas into what you're planning to do, that will really help. And of course, technical competency, desire to learn, you know, being able to actually fundamentally do the work is of course important, but I don't really consider that to be a personality trait. But the discipline and sort of drive to continue to learn, improve, and, you know, sort of practice your craft is important.
I mean, you can comment on this too, but I'd say for startup, flexibility is probably something you really need to have. I know what I'm going to do today. I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and Wednesday. I probably don't know what I'm going to do next Monday. Mostly because things change all the time. It's, you get a new client come in and say, we need this, and we need it, you know, yesterday. I'm like, okay, I guess we need to build that. Or someone says, yeah, we can do that because we sort of can. But they need this other tweak. And so you have to basically move a project around that you had planned and or are currently working on to do something else entirely. So that kind of flexibility and being okay with that is something you definitely need to start. And also being flexible in the process. So at a more established company, like TripAdvisor, for example, or Google, or any, even IBM, if you want to go that big, they have definite process. And sort of like, this is what they do, this is how they do it. They have a definite, you know, A to B to C to D. Like if you start a project, this is how, these are the next 3 steps. This is how you do it, this is how we then review it, this is how it's done, this is how it's released. At a startup, basically you're still learning that process and you're still learning how to do that best for the people that you work with. At a large company, other people have done that work for you, and the corporate culture that has developed has given that rise to that process of how things are done, whereas at a smaller startup with a fewer number of people, that set of people that you're currently working with and their personalities and their attitudes and kind of their drive and how they do things shapes the process. And you try, it's really like research, but research on process, where you try something one week and you say, did that work? Did that make it any better? Did we get things done better, faster, more efficiently, or did that just completely suck? A lot of times, like with any other research thing, it sucked, and we'll try something else. But so that being flexible both on what you're working on and also flexible on how you do things, in addition to everything else that you were saying, is something that I look for when I talk to people that are interested. So, yeah.
I think my answer has a lot of commonalities, and I was surprised and kind of found it cool to hear Soha's answers because there's even more connections between there than I was realizing. But the first one, and Bill already said this, but the word is a little cliche, so I hesitate to say it, but that passion thing, you need to like care about what you're doing. And if you don't have that, like really nothing else is gonna come. All the other things you can try, but you'll be going through the motions and you won't actually be doing it fully there, like 100% yourself. So passion is like a huge one. The flexibility thing that's really, really key. I was in like a pretty extreme version of that, and it wasn't even like tomorrow I'm gonna walk in and realize that we need to totally change the way around the product that we're doing. It was like, tomorrow we're gonna walk in and realize that we're actually not doing that product anymore, and we were a totally different company. And that level of flexibility means you can't get really attached to the code you wrote because you're probably gonna have to throw it away. So all these things may sound like a little negative, but then like why would you ever want to work at a startup? And I think the key personality trait that would make someone motivated to work at a startup is wanting to see a large impact of themselves on the business and then see that quickly become something that's actually tangible out in the world that people are using. And so like if you feel that need to make something and get it out into the world and you don't want to sit around and wait for it to happen later, then startup is probably a good place for you.
Skills. If someone wants to break into your field or area of work, what are the important skills to have and the necessary things to do now? I know that there are people who want to get into go to PhD route, start up, or go to a tech company. So what skills? And what they need to do now?
Goodness, what skills? So I assume that we're going to be talking about from sort of like a new grad perspective or sort of graduate student who's looking for sort of their first job. So there are a few things that I really look for a software engineering candidate. And the first thing that I'm looking for is some indication that you care about what you're doing. So all the things that we just talked about, and that will manifest usually in one of two ways. Either you went out and got yourself some awesome internship and learned a lot, and you can demonstrate, these are the things that I did. Not these are the things that the intern program did, but these are the things that I did, and here's what I learned. Or you went off and you did some sort of personal project of your own. And it's not that you went and you dabbled with something, you actually launched it. It's live. May not be finished, it may not be perfect, may not look awesome, but you know what? You put it out there. So whether it's on the App Store or the Play Store or just a website, you know, you've got something that works. You can demo it, you can see it. So there's actually a real product out there that you built. So that demonstrates to me not only that you have the ability to build something like that, but you cared enough to do it and you had the discipline to see it through. So all of those things are important. In terms of technical skill set, CS fundamentals are really important. And you know, it doesn't really occur to a lot of undergrads, but a lot of senior software engineers will poo-poo this and say, oh, why are you asking me undergrad questions? I don't, you know, I've been in the industry for 15 years, I don't need to know about data structures. Well, if you happen to come to TripAdvisor or you go to one of these startups and they hit it big, all of a sudden you're gonna have more traffic than you know what to do with. And if you've chosen the wrong data structures or you've made poor choices, all of your software is going to come tumbling down and you are going to go offline because it can't sustain itself. So understanding your CS fundamentals and sort of mastering them is important. And then having a few different tools in your toolkit. So you don't want to be a one-trick pony. You don't want to say, oh, I know C and C++ and I can code circles around that. Well, that's great, but I doubt you really want to write a C or C++ application to do a little bit of log parsing or count some stuff or pull some data or anything like that. So knowing a little bit of shell scripting or some Python or whatever you want. There are lots of different ways to do the job well. There's no one right answer. But having a couple different ways to do things is tremendously important because then you'll get out there and you'll actually get things done faster than people expect. And so people will have a very positive impression of you. You'll be like, oh, geez, Bill really did an awesome job. He's a great employee. I made a great hiring decision with them. And there's a little bit of confirmation bias there. So you'll continue to do a good job even if you're still learning and have some bumps along the way. So I think those skills really help. And there are other skills, but I think those are the ones that will really help both secure the job and do well when you get that first opportunity.
So yeah, it's kind of building on that. So I'll just tell you, this is how I go through the hiring process with anyone. So step one is I send out coding problems. So I give you a coding assignment. There are 2 problems, and that's basically you get a week to do it, just like any problem set, and it's to demonstrate that you can write code, and it's no time limit. So it's like, well, if I give you a spec, if I give you just an empty class or a bunch of stuff, can you write some code and make it actually work? That's step number 1. And then, assuming that is good, we call you in for an interview. Interview consists of basically 3 different things. Step 1 is you give a presentation, and that presentation is on a project you worked on, just like you said. It could be a class project, it could be a personal project, it could be an internship, but it sort of demonstrates something technically that you've done in the past. And most importantly, what technical obstacle did you run into and how did you solve it? It doesn't have to be the right answer, it doesn't have to be, hey, look, we tried it this way and it didn't work. That's perfectly fine. But being able to say why it didn't work, as in, was the wrong data structure, or we made this assumption, but ended up being that was the wrong assumption. It's perfectly fine. Then we do high-level type questions of, hey, I need to build a ticketing system for a baseball stadium. How would you do that? Like, what are the bits and pieces you need, right? What different servers, web servers, database servers? Like, what are the bits and pieces that you need to build that and put that together? It's not actually coding, but it's sort of, do you understand the bits and pieces of things that you need to make a web application work? It's not just like a problem set answer where it's like, hey, can you make a dictionary that's, spell checks this really quickly for me? It's like a one small thing, but that's not how most applications work, right? It's a whole bunch of moving parts, everything kind of works together. So do you have an understanding of that big picture? And a lot of that comes with either experience, an internship, or taking a class that's based on that, or doing a personal project. And then the final part, like most other companies, is a whiteboard coding. And that's, do you write code well? As in, if I give you a problem and you have 20 minutes to solve it, and there's someone watching you write code, and you're under pressure, can you do it? And that's not meant, it's not a hard question, it's not a question that you should, I mean, it's something you could solve after you've done your first semester of computer science. So it's not meant to be a hard question, but it's a question of how do you deal under pressure? Because that happens all the time. I mean, not to that extent where someone's watching you do stuff, but do you handle it gracefully? Do you handle it, do you explain your train of thought? Are you clear about how you think? And kind of if you put all that together, that kind of gives you a good picture of who someone is, along with do they have passion, all that other stuff we talked about. But that's sort of the technical side of things that we look for.
All right. Let's see. So I think probably the biggest soft skill that I can think of that will help you be successful is ability to take criticism of your work, and mostly like the main word is like listen. So you, like basically all of us, me and you, like we're all pretty inexperienced and we kind of suck. And so if you want to get better, you need to listen to people when they give you feedback. And like as straightforward as that sounds, sometimes it can be kind of hard. One thing that helps with that is partitioning off, like when someone is giving you critiques on your code, that's on your code, it's not you. And we notice that, like when I hire, we do a project with someone and we'll do a code review with them. And that's like a pretty key indicator of, is this person someone I'm gonna want to work with? Not I'm gonna want to work with as in like we can go out and get a beer afterwards. That's not like the type of I'm gonna want to work with that I care about. It's are we gonna, if we disagree on something, are we gonna be able to get over that agreement quickly and just come to something that works and get it out the door, because probably we're both right. So that listening part is a big one. Probably you're also looking for some like quick little like buzzword thing I can learn to go get a job. I've noticed right now that this will probably be different in like a year, but if you just go learn how to program an iPhone, you can get a job. Also take machine learning, because a lot of people want machine learning people right now.
Well, I think, technical competence is really important. Is that a skill? I mean, technical competence. But for solving research problems, and also, whatever, maybe more general, I find that the skill of being able to learn something and really learn it well for the sake of learning it is actually what carries you forward. A lot of times, I know I grade some homework sometimes, or look at tests and look at how people answer the questions. And sometimes people are just kind of repeating, here's a string of 7 words that I know are important and I'm going to put them in a sentence. And, it really pays off to spend the time to really understand something right when you learn it the first time. And there's a reason for that, because when you go up to your next level or you move on to your next problem, if you learn that material really, really well, it's going to take you fewer amount of effort or less effort to actually solve that problem. Because it's not like, oh, I don't know how to do this, I have to go back. I know I learned it in Comp 15, I have to go back and do it. It's more like, oh, I've got it at the tip of my tongue, I've got it right here, I know how to do it, I can build on it. And I think that's the most amazing thing with CS education that we have here at Tufts, is we teach you really, really cool things in all the classes. But it's up to you to actually take the pieces and connect them together and make something more out of them. So as a researcher, connecting the dots, I learned this idea here, and I learned this idea here, and I learned this idea here, I learned machine learning there, and you're able to sort of tie it together. So when you see a problem, you're like, oh yeah, I could do a network flaw on this, or no, there's a classification algorithm that works really well on this. And I think, again, learning stuff well is really one of the key things that will drive your technical competence, so.
I want to add a side note here is I hope each and every one of you here picked up a certain theme from each and every one of our panelists tonight. Is they mentioned about communicating not only communicating what what you've done, but also your passion as well. And this is one of the reasons why we are having a reverse career fair, a portfolio presentation after the career fair this year. And at a career fair, who's going to be at the career fair? Who's going? And the problem is that it's so hard to have a good conversation with like an employer, like for example, Bill, is, there's so many people in line that want to drop off a resume, but how can you have like a nice, meaningful conversation with someone? And even Alden, you mentioned about critiquing someone's code. And so the reverse career, the portfolio showcase is an opportunity, is an intimate opportunity where you can showcase your work with pride. You can actually have a one-on-one talk with, let's say, someone like Alden, and you can go back and forth. That's a strong, that sort of event, you're going to have a pretty good understanding of a person instead, you can have a pretty good understanding of the person's ability. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, if like an event like that. Yeah.
Can I ask a general question? Just going off what you guys are talking about.
Okay, so a lot of you were talking about learning and skills that you guys look for. So I was just wondering if maybe you could speak to, at least maybe more for the companies, but what exactly you expect like a first-year engineer to know ahead of time versus what you expect for them to learn on the job. Great question. And I think it's the basic technical ability. It's sort of, we don't expect you to have built a distributed system that can handle 10,000 concurrent requests at the same time. Like, we don't expect that. We expect you to want to learn about that. We expect you to have the desire to learn about it and the ability to learn about it. And that's kind of what we look for. And again, it's all that, like Alden was saying, it's being able to deal with criticism in that kind of sense. So like, how do you deal in a environment where you're not totally in control? There's certain things that you can control the code you write, but you can't control anything around that. Sort of, when someone reviews your code, how do you handle that, right? I mean, if you look at my Git history for our code, I've deleted about the same number of lines of code as I've ever written. And that's through code reviews, and I do code reviews, and entry-level people will review my code, right? It's sort of, it goes full circle. And so being able to just be part of a team, and part of it is not just, can you handle that problem? So with Alden was saying, like, do you handle that problem? Can we handle it? Can we agree to disagree or both come to a conclusion on some way to do something? One of the things we look for is, am I willing to sit next to you for 8 hours a day? If the answer to that question is no, it's hard to justify having you be part of it, especially a small team. Right? It's like you work as part of a small team, so we want nice people that are fun and caring, and yeah, that's kind of the starting point, I guess. It's really long.
So I think you're going to hear a lot of common themes, because even though I'm here to represent tech companies, TripAdvisor and other similar tech companies are all very startup-minded, so even if they're larger at this point in time, they still adhere to those sort of standards. So that said, there are three things that I really want to see from a CS student who's looking for their first opportunity. Number one is coding fluency. The hardest part of the job should be figuring out how to solve the problems and what the hell you're doing, not how to code it. So, we sort of expect that you can write code after doing it for 4 years. So that just comes with practice. So work on those personal projects, do the extra problem set, experiment, and so forth. So coding fluency is number one. Problem-solving ability is number two. Can you think about things in different ways? Can you accept feedback? Can you figure things out? And if you If you need a hint or whatever, that's fine, or if you need to collaborate with someone, that's fine, which brings me to the third point, is communication. So none of the engineers that I work with, I don't want to babysit them. I have plenty of stuff to do on my own. I want the engineers to tell me when they need something. Hey, I don't know how this system works. You know, can you help me? And I'll say, well, I have no idea. I've never worked with that either. We need to go talk to Joe, or whatever the case may be, and we'll go figure it out together. But you bringing it up helps get you unblocked. It doesn't take time away from me, and we're not waiting for a whole bunch of, wasting a whole bunch of time where nothing's getting done. Certain amount of self-sufficiency is also good. You know, it's a balancing act that you'll sort of dial in over time. You're probably not going to get it right at first, but you know, and also not constantly interrupting people is where I'm going with that. So you know, you try, you work on it, but communicating early and often definitely helps.
Here's the academic question. Were you asking like which classes, particular classes would be of value?
I was asking more in terms of like how much they expect us to know, like what languages and example problems and, you know, project history we have versus what they'll allow us to just learn over there. So I guess it's more specifically for.
Okay, I'm gonna let him answer that now. That would clarify.
So the answer for full-time employees and interns is quite a bit different at my company. But because we're really, really new, we have a pretty high expectations for full-time employees. For internships, we basically expect to be teaching you a whole bunch all the time. For a full-time employee, would be the way we organize it is kind of, we go back to how we organize our teams, but they're usually very small teams with basically one person to cover each of the like functionalities that we need. So say we're making a web product, and that has an API and some web front end stuff, and it probably has a graphical user interface. We probably need a designer on there. So that would be a 3-person team. There'd be a designer, a front end person, and a back end person. And so a full-time employee, we need them to pretty soon be basically carrying whatever section that they're handling. We need them to be carrying that for the whole team and not dragging the rest of the team down. So that might sound like, damn, how do you hire recent grads? And we don't hire too many people directly right out of college for that very reason. But if you are able to basically look at other examples of code that's been written and keep adding things on, like we don't need you to be building and architecting entire systems from scratch on day one. If you can look at the way we did this over here for this thing that was sort of similar, and then go model it and create one in a similar way over here, and that way you can be carrying your team as you're coming up to speed, then that's great. And if you can be learning those things pretty quickly, then that's good.
So, thank you for the question. I think what we're going to do, what we're definitely going to do, think of questions. I think this is good. That we want to hear your question. Think of a few questions that you have in your head, and we're definitely going to have time for Q&A. I think we're going to switch gears a little bit here. We're going to switch the questions up around. In fact, the Tufts Computer Science Exchange Group, the Tufts CSX, who are the officers, by the way? Where are the officers? There was Obaid. Are you here? Okay. So the CSX sent a few questions that are really cool questions. One of them is, okay, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you might be probably thinking of this as well. What classes did you take at Tufts that helped you the most for where you are today?
Sorry, so hot.
It's okay, it was a research class.
It's okay, man. It's okay. It's okay.
It's definitely got to go to Comp 40 and 105. And the reasons are basically teaching you frameworks to understand new things. You are going to be constantly having new stuff thrown at you. The technology industry changes, like new random technologies pop up every 6 months or less. And without the frameworks, both programming languages and that functional understanding I got from 105, and the how to design a computer system that I got from Comp 40, Basically, those tools and frameworks help me understand new things much faster and build a system that actually can be like larger than a teeny little thing.
I'm gonna have to say data structures and algorithms are my bread and butter, so.
Two classes come to mind. One is Comp 20 with Alva Couch. That was a great class because he taught a bunch of different programming languages that are actually still relevant today.
What is the title of that course? I think the numbers might have changed.
Was it programming languages? Or
No,
web
it was
design?
web programming at the
It was
time.
Comp 20, it's the prior 20, to Ming's 20.
So it was all the sort of web technologies and some PHP, some Perl, like it was sort of a hodgepodge of stuff. And that was very useful because I became at least proficient or competent. I wouldn't say good, but I could do things in that hodgepodge of stuff. So I was adding to my toolkit. So when I got out there in the real world, I wasn't married to C and C++. I wasn't building desktop apps. I could actually do some stuff out there on the web. So that was very useful. Algorithms and data structures are also tremendously important. And I didn't use them as much immediately out of school, but that was primarily based on the fact that I was doing a lot on the web. I was doing a lot of UI, UX development focused on sort of the user at that point. And I've sort of migrated more towards the back end over my career, and so that's become increasingly important. But I still remember those classes, and they were very helpful.
Yeah, and I actually never took Comp 20, but I actually walked in on the end of Couch's class, and what I remember from it was he was talking about, in his kind of laughing way, he was like,
Really slimy face.
so you can write a PHP thing that then writes JavaScript, which then takes that JavaScript, which gives you another thing back to the PHP, which rewrites the JavaScript to give you a completely different website. He's like, and like just that thing like blew my mind when I remember that. So. Back to the classes. Minus that, plus all those things, I actually took, I did an independent study class, and I taught computer science or kind of about computers to the local community, like at the local community school, like down the road. And I think that was really helpful, just because it was taking something I knew and then explaining to someone. I mean, the people that I was teaching it were like 60, 70-year-old people that basically you had to tell them what a mouse was. So like literally tell them what a computer is, how to work it. So it's not computer science at all in that sense. But being able to transfer what you know and you're really good at to someone that knows absolutely nothing about it. And that goes back to communication skills. And being able to do that, I think that really helped me. Yeah.
So, Alden actually alluded to a next question from the CSX, which is, how do you keep up? Like, how do you keep up? Is it that hard? And here's the context of the question. It seems like every day there's a new technology or something new that gets launched. How do you keep up?
So actually, I love a comment that Eldon had said about frameworks. I think whatever you do, whether you're designing under the hood computer or you're learning, a new language, if you don't have a mental framework in which you catalog this piece of data, you're actually not able to retain it and organize it and retrieve it later. So I think having a framework and being conscious of what your framework and where the holes are in your framework is really helpful. For example, I've never taken an official machine learning class in my life just because of circumstances. And yet I know bits and pieces, right? But I know sometimes it's like, okay, I do have this hole in machine learning, and this problem, I think it could be solved in this technique, but I really don't know it. But I know I have a hole in my framework, and that's the point where I say, okay, I have a hole, I need to fill it, I need to ask somebody, or I need to read something. And it's very important for me personally to keep track of this mental framework and where I'm very good at, and I know a lot, and I have holes, and so on. So for me, that's a really, really important part.
So there's definitely too much for you to keep up with. So you sort of have to pick and choose. So I generally like to find something in a category of technology and find a way to use it in either day-to-day or sort of my personal stuff. So, you know, to give you an example, you know, I'm trying to solve this problem at TripAdvisor. You know, it really bugs me that, and I can give you more information if you're interested, but I'll keep the story short. And it's not on the live website, so I'm sort of free to use whatever technology I want to actually go and solve the problem. So I said, well, you know what, I haven't poked around with Node.js too much, so you know what, I'm going to build it on Node.js. I know how to code JavaScript. That will sort of give me an understanding of how that technology works. And in the course of doing so, I sort of learn the pros and cons of it. And you know, then I think to myself, okay, well, you know, now I've got Node.js, I could build the whole thing in there, or I could just do an API. Okay, well, what else could I benefit from? Well, there's this whole class of stuff, AngularJS, React.js, Backbone.js, all these Java client-side JavaScript frameworks for building sort of single-page web application. Well, I'll pick one and play around with it. You know, maybe it's not the best possible use case, but, you know, I'll learn a lot from it. And so you have to do something with it. I don't think it's enough to just read about it. You actually have to do something with it, at least for me. Because unless I do that, I don't internalize any of it and it doesn't stick. I might remember it for 2 weeks, but then it's not tremendously useful. So, you know, ask me in 6 months to a year whether I remember exactly all of those implementation details, but at least I'll have this picture in my mind so that when I am presented with the opportunity again to make a technology decision, what am I going to use to solve this problem? I at least know some about these different technologies, and then I can either go pick it up again or learn it, learn something new, or whatever the case may be. And so I find that that is the most useful thing, because at this point I simply don't have enough time in my day to learn everything.
So there's one guy that I work with, and he has a feed of data that basically new things that pop up, and he sends emails out to the company of things that he thinks are interesting. So that's how I keep up with that kind of stuff, because I get an email twice a day oh, this is new and this is fun.
Personal curated feed.
Right, we have a personal internal curated feed, but then it's kind of a combination of those two. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to try new things too much. But usually what I end up doing is, if I see something that he sends or there's a problem that we're looking at trying to solve, I'll try to find what other people have done to try to solve it. And it's usually, the technology itself, I think, doesn't matter as much. It's same it doesn't really matter if you use Python, Ruby, C, Java, JavaScript. You can solve any problem with almost any language. Languages should be, same like French, English, Japanese, doesn't matter. You can say most of the same things in a different language, it's a different way of doing it. What I try to get at is, what is it trying to solve? What's the nugget of why is this thing there and why did no one else do this before? That if I have that same sort of problem, okay, you know, system X did this and they decided to make this decision, and oh, that's actually really smart. Or then someone else, you know, 2 months later writes the same thing. It's oh, we have this better way to analyze logs, for example. Well, why is it better? It's well, they used this thing instead of this other thing. And so I look at that, so less the technology itself, but sort of what the technology is trying to solve, and try to internalize that. Because that way, you don't have to keep up with all the different bits and pieces, but you just keep up with the problem they're trying to solve. I find that to be easier.
If I can add one thing, group learning is fun. So, you know, you can get a book. Let's say that you want to learn Scala. Get a book, and then, you know, read it on your own time, and then get together and try to solve the exercises, the little things at the back of the book, the little homework problems. And you can sort of compare answers, and, you know, maybe you just pick a few. But in doing that, at least someone else is also holding you accountable for continuing to advance, so you don't just drop it on the floor when something comes up.
Yeah, I would just say that having that framework so you can file something away, say you know, Swift came out, and then I can be oh, from programming languages, I can pretty quickly read it and be okay, it's basically object-oriented with a little bit of functional stuff mixed in, and it's got this really nice optional thing in there, and that's mainly the new idea. So that's sorry. There's more to Swift than that. But the key part of that is looking at it, figuring out where you can file it away, and knowing that there is something there in that little spot that you can go and learn more about when you need that thing. And then also having all those other, that background and like frameworks, you can figure out what are like the actual new ideas in here. So like React.js came out and everybody's like, oh my God, React, awesome. But like the main new idea is that you should stop dealing with like state transitions and updating things in 10 different places, and instead just have some state and then render your thing. And like that was a cool simplifying idea. And so I actually don't know React very well, but I picked out that idea because I could like look at it and figure out what was the new stuff and what's just like another big hyped JavaScript library. And so now that I know, like, if I'm gonna go look for something and I need a particular tool, I can go to that box, or it's not actually a box in my head, but I'll go to that place and then find the tool that I want and then go actually learn more about it. And then there's the other side of actually trying out things that are related to whatever you're doing, like actually doing little side projects with stuff, see if you can work it into your work. At my old work, we had these little like mini hackathon-y things. My new work is kind of like one big extended hackathon. And then you're using your work network too. Like if you go work at a job with a bunch of other smart people, they're going to be reading all those online news feeds and dropping links in or talking about it at lunch. And so you can get like an informed opinion, because hopefully your coworkers are smart, and then help fill in those little boxes for yourself from your peers.
So, I want to spend some time, I'm gonna turn it over to you. But before I do, I want to give a shout out. We have a special guest in the audience. We have Robin Kahn. Robin is the Associate Director of Career Outreach for the School of Engineering. And your office hours when? Let me guess. Is it Tuesdays, Thursdays?
Monday inside town from 11 to 12, Tuesdays in Anderson from 2:30 to 4:30, and Thursdays in Hallion from 3 to 5.
Cool. So make sure you have no excuse to not show up to meet with Robin. So, I want to turn it over to you. What questions do you have for our panelists? What you got? Let's go in the back and then go second.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for coming. The stuff that you're saying is really, really important, and I think this is really going to help us. Sir, I wanted to ask in context of startups. For example, you come across a massive problem. Let us say you are bombarded with like a mega data set for a new client. Now, do you go outright and buy a product, ready-made product, let us say Amazon's MapReduce, or do you actually start first to try to solve it on your own for a couple of months, and then if things don't happen, then you go and acquire a new asset?
I'll start. So hopefully before we get bombarded with that huge thing, we will have sat down and thought about our architecture a little bit before we even started building things, to figure out a way that it would scale up once we need to. And that doesn't mean we need to build that immediately, but just have that in your mind. So most of the technologies that we picked to use at my company from the beginning, they're not like what we have right now. If you just dumped like a million times the traffic we get right now on us, we would totally fall over. But we have a path from where we are now to supporting that. We would definitely not spend months, so say all that failed and then we got a totally new challenge and we didn't know how to handle it. We wouldn't spend months trying to figure it out and then go buy something, but we would probably at the beginning just kind of take a survey of what are the open source tools out here to do it, what do we already have, because the more new elements you introduce, the more complexity you introduce into your system. And then, and some of those elements might be like, we run a lot of our stuff on Amazon, so we might just go draw on that right away from the beginning.
So I would say similarly, take months and replace that with days. And that's about how much time you have to sort of spend it, but hopefully you've done a little bit of contingency planning and you have enough headroom to accommodate a potential burst of traffic. But what happens if it does? Is the problem something that you can solve with distributed systems? That's sort of where this sort of spitballing and problem-solving skill comes into play. You have to keep your product up and running. How are you going to do it? It doesn't have to be permanent, but you have to sort of get the job done. So I don't think that there's any single one answer to the problem, except for the fact that it can't be measured in months.
Yeah, I think the name of the game, just like with any sort of optimization to a problem, it's fail fast. Right? The faster you can fail, that's the faster you don't have to try that. Right? And so yeah, it's days, if that. Right? It's definitely less than a week. You want to try something. And it's also knowing where to spend your time, not just failing fast, but like, is it worth spending time on this? Right? It's like if we get a big thing and it's a one-time event, how much time do you actually want to spend on that? So I mean, we have features that I'm ashamed to say, but it'll send me an email to run a script because it happens once every 2 weeks, and it takes less time to write a script that I can manually verify to make sure that things happen correctly than it is to write the code to actually work in all cases, in all failure scenarios. So depending on what you press on our site, I might get an email and I might have to run a script. So.
So, well, actually we got one, and we got a couple in the back.
Just want to say thank you so much, and I know at least one of you guys said you worked for a bit in a different country that wasn't the US, and I was wondering if you had any tips. What's it like doing tech in a country that's not the US? Do you have any tips to get started, to find a job? Or?
So I never worked, I grew up in Japan, and I had one internship in Japan. But that was actually in the banking industry, so I don't know much about the actual tech side of things. But when it comes to working abroad, it really depends on where you're working and what industry you're working in. But they are looking for the same thing that companies are looking for here. And if, the difference being just the culture. Sort of, so it's not just Japan. That's where I know. The culture there is very different from the culture here. It's not better or worse, it's just different. And you have to be able to adapt to that if that's what you want to do. And kind of be able to live in that kind of culture and work in that culture and understand that because something happens one way, it's not because you did something wrong or you did something differently. It's just because that's a different way to do something. Yeah, that's kind of the best thing I can say. Just be open to differences, take it in stride.
Oh, one in the back. Hi, 1, 2, 3.
Hi. So first, thank you all for being here. So I know a lot of questions are about like after we graduate and stuff. I know like I and a lot of other people are very anxious to get out of school and just get in a real job and whatever. But I guess since you're all Tufts grads, what is one thing that you would say if you could go back, or like for current students, like that we should take advantage of while at Tufts, either a class or an activity or just anything that you wish that you had taken advantage of or that we should be thinking about before we're like out of school? Thanks.
You stole my thunder because that was going to be the final question, but that's okay. That's a phenomenal question.
I'll start. Actually, I love that question because I know a lot about what Tufts has to offer. I think one of the things that I notice is people coming in, they're so obsessed about getting A's in classes, they kind of lose sight of why they are here. There is no question in my mind that you're here to learn how to learn. Okay? So to learn how to learn, it doesn't mean that I have to go sit in a class and just learn the stuff, check the boxes, and leave. It's really figuring out what it is that, who am I as a learner, and where can I learn how to learn. The number one way to learn how to learn is to learn a lot of stuff and to learn different kinds of things that require you to develop different kinds of skills. you know, whether it's doing a hackathon, whether it's doing a research project with a faculty advisor, whether it's getting with, you know, one of the programs that CSX puts on, you know, to boot Linux on your PC or, you know, learn R in like 3 minutes. I mean, there's really so many things going on here. And don't deprive yourself from the pleasures of learning something new. And just really jump into it, take a chance. And yeah, you know, that homework may not be perfect and what your parents are going to say, that's horrible. No, you're just going to do it. Just embrace what you want to learn. Live your dream and not just wait for it to kind of go by and then, oh my goodness, I'm graduating. I wish I took that, blah, blah, blah. So.
Great advice. As you were saying that, I was having this thought, I can't believe I didn't take a class pass-fail. I didn't take a single pass-fail class at Tufts. That like doesn't make any, like, give yourself that opportunity to go make some mistakes because that's where you learn a lot of things. And you're not gonna feel like you can mess up or try something, a class that you might not do very well in if you're just constantly worried about your grade. Another thing, I wish I did more like projects with other people, like other classmates. I did some types of those things, but I didn't enroll myself in the senior design project because I was the liberal arts side of computer science, and like that wasn't a requirement. So I didn't do Ming's class where you spend a year working with people and learning how to build a real thing and put it out in the world. And for like so many of those other reasons that people have already said, that looks great in a job.
You didn't want to take that first version with me. Man, why screwed that one up? Oh, wow. Second year, oh, that was better. Oh.
But looking back on it, there's lots of like side benefits from doing that. Like for example, we just hired someone because one of my coworkers had worked on their senior project with that person and knew that that was a person that they worked well with and who was like reliable. And then also, I didn't realize that you can rent like as much music as you want from the music library for free. So do that, take advantage of that, even though you probably all have Spotify now.
So I'll second the don't be afraid to fail. There are all sorts of great events out there for software developers and software engineers, CS graduates. It is an awesome market out there. Everyone wants software engineers. Every company is a software company. So going back to find something that you believe in and are passionate about. Even if you don't want to work for corporate America or do research, there are nonprofits that you can work for. There's all sorts of stuff. So I took Italian pass-fail and I had a blast, so it was lots of fun. When you don't have any stress, you can learn some and sort of grow as a person in addition to learning something. Whether or not it sticks when you don't actually get graded or care as much is questionable. It was better when I went there for my honeymoon because I actually had to practice. So.
Sweet.
I would also say that because I got into CS sort of on the later side, remembering that I went into biology, I didn't feel like I had the opportunity to really study abroad because I was trying to catch up a little bit. I would totally encourage you guys to study abroad. You know, explore those things when you have a chance. Even if it's to an English-speaking country, it's not cheating. Go to Australia, go to London, who cares? Just go, you know, experience that other culture. So. Those are things that I would do again. I would also try to go get a kick-ass internship somewhere. It doesn't matter whether you get paid or not. I think it's a lot better environment now than it was back when I was in school. It was sort of the dot-com bubble. So a lot of people were focused on making money and not necessarily doing a lot of cool things. There was a lot of vaporware. And so there's a lot of opportunity to learn stuff out there and outside of the classes. And truth be told, I learned more on the job than I ever did with specific respect to CS topics on the job than I did here. I learned the fundamentals at Tufts and they were great, and I learned a lot of different skills and things that allowed me to be successful, but also being here at Tufts allowed me to figure out what I wanted to do and how to go achieve those goals. So try lots of different things. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I'm going to build on that, but kind of go opposite route and say try things you wouldn't do when you graduate. So there's a reason why there are distribution requirements. Art classes, like I'm not a great artist by any means. I took an art class at the, what's it called, museum school. the first day and basically, you try to draw stuff. Like, I'm horrible at it, but it was a lot of fun. I can't sing for the life of me, but I need an art credit, so I did gospel choir. I can't sing, but I got in because everyone gets in. It's a lot of fun, and especially if you see, one person going the wrong way, and, when that was me, so like, horrible. But it was a lot of fun. And like, do that, right? So like, when you graduate, you don't have the time to do that anymore, right? You're working, 9 to 5 minimum. By the time you get to the office and leave the office and get home, you're tired. You want to go to sleep or do whatever it is. While you're in school, you can still do something that's completely different. And I'm also going to say, for you, do a research project. Don't just do internship. Internships are great, you learn a lot. But try something, again, think of something that you wouldn't normally do. Try doing research. Stay here at Tufts and do a research project over the summer. That's how I got into research. It was a lot of fun. I wouldn't have thought of doing it, but sort of like I fell into it. I was like, oh, that's great. So kind of just take those opportunities and run with them.
Different strokes for different folks. I did try research and it was not for me. I didn't really get much out of it. So you have to sort of know what's going to work for you.
I'm going to take some liberties here, and I actually want to address that question myself, because this has been a question I've been thinking about for a while. I turned, well, I'm in my 30s now, well into my 30s. So now you know. And when you hit the age,
It's like sounding like an old man.
well, the problem is that it's happened quite a bit. I've asked, if I had to do this all over again, like, what would I do differently? And that answer has, like, that really hit me, and I said, if I had to do this all over again, I think there would be a lot of things I would do differently. One, if I take a look at where I am today, especially my work in information security, I wish I definitely delved into research more when I was in, during my time when I was a student, because if you take a look at I pretty much have done almost everything possible in the field, with the exception of like doing a research and presenting at Black Hat. So I think in terms of my skill set, doing the research and information security, that's like my biggest gap area. And that was one area that I'm weak at, and I wish I got more exposure when I was a student here. So that's one. The second thing is, I wish I took more risk, a lot more risk. I felt that my career, everything I've done was almost like straight as narrow. And I agree with Patrick. You want to do the stuff that, you don't want to do, when you're like 25, 26, or 27. Like, get that out of your system. At least see how it is. Because I think a lot of people fail to understand is that during your time in school, I don't think a lot of students really can comprehend this, but, it's actually okay to fail. It's perfectly acceptable to make mistakes. And this is the best time of your life to do that. Because when you get older, the number of opportunities and the number of risks, chances that you're going to take risks, the window gets smaller and smaller. God forbid if you have a house, if you have a wife and a kid, or a husband and a kid, and like in my case, I had to do like elder care as well too. And so the number of opportunities, the windows of opportunity gets smaller and smaller. Trying to get out of the house and travel, to go to Old Trafford and Manchester, England, those are not too easy to do. I wish I did more of that when I was younger. I wish I definitely took more chances. So, I know there's another question.
So I'm actually going to change my question because of the answers that everyone just gave. So there's a lot of talk about doing your own independent projects and things like that, but with all of the other opportunities at Tufts that aren't CS, does it look bad to, instead of spending your personal time doing outside projects, to invest and do something, join a sports team, join a club, join something like that that's unrelated to what you're going to be working in later in life?
That is a very good question. So I would say that as a person, yes, absolutely. When you're submitting resumes for your first company, your involvement in the sports team, it may not be relevant. You might not include it. So it might be something very worthwhile. So, you know, I'd highly encourage you to figure out what your goals are and figuring out, you know, how are you going to meet those goals? So, you know, if you want to, you know, get a job with a tech company coming out of school, well, okay, so you're gonna have to do something that attracts their attention. And I don't know if we're going to get to this question or not, Ming, but Ming had a question about grades versus experience versus something else.
You want to address that now?
Sure, I'll touch on it. So number one is absolutely experience. It's not years of experience, but things that you've done, things that you've accomplished are going to be the number one thing that attracts my attention on your resume. Doesn't mean that you have to have 5 of them. So you don't have to, with single-minded focus, sort of attack this like, you know, it's awful and it's a job and you have to go through the motions. This is not, you know, getting into college. You don't have to, you know, be president of 5 different clubs to get a job at a tech company. But you do have to do something that indicates that you're sort of passionate and you want to get enough experience so that you sort of have that coding fluency. Because you don't want to get into that interview later and be like, okay, I know how to solve this problem, but I just can't figure out how to write that code. So you do need to spend enough time with your discipline that you can actually be successful sort of coming out of the gate. But I would definitely encourage you to spend time doing different things, trying different things. So, you know, as with all things, it's sort of a balancing act. You need to balance, you know, your personal interests with career aspirations and, you know, try lots of different things. And if you can marry them together, all the better. Is there some, you know, data analytics startup that you can do for soccer players? I don't know. But, you know, there are lots of different things that you can try. So even if it's not successful, it's worth exploring.
So, you know, this is a really, really important question. And, you know, how do you balance your time, right? I want to point out to something that is very important that we did not hit on, is the network aspect of your life. You're in school, you're like, okay, they're all students here, you know, what do I care? But reality is all the people that are sitting in this room here, they are your colleagues. You know, 10 years out, you want to hire somebody, you want somebody who's good at X. The people that you've built your community with or that you networked with are the people that you're going to keep for a long time. And you might say, you know, oh, you know, playing sports, I'm going to meet people in IR, God forbid, right? Or people in music, oh my goodness. You just have no idea who's going to come your way and what opportunities they're going to bring to you in your life and how they're going to enrich your life. The fail thing, you know, the embrace thing, find a way to balance and do everything that you're passionate about. Do not deprive yourself from playing sports because you have to do a good, cool CS project. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, do both. That might sound like a kind of cop-out, but both. They're just like, well, getting a job is not the be-all, end-all of your life. So make sure to like make time for other things outside of that. And so if that's just like, just for that one reason, go do other things. But like, remember your personal happiness. Remember like, you're having like fun, or like enjoy your childhood or your youth and all that stuff. Like it's very possible to both like do a cool project and be on a team, and your cool project may even like come out of the team. Like I literally know people who like built the website for the Frisbee team because they were on the Frisbee team and they wouldn't have like done that, and now they had like a thing to show.
So what Ming was saying earlier, if you want to take the less dark side of it, I mean, college and kind of, so the younger you are, the more opportunities are available to you. And it's about finding that opportunity and finding what direction you want to go to. So the older you get, the more responsibility you have, the more fine-tuned, like it's harder to move the arrow later on. So when you're younger, you can move that arrow much further. So, you know, college, grad school, where the case may be, or even high school, depending on how far you want to go back, it's time to explore where you want to point that arrow, right? You want to find that the major vector at some point, and then everything around that is sort of are things that fire off of it. And you may find that one of these tangents is going to put your arrow in a completely different direction. That's kind of where you end up going. That's kind of how it was with CS for me, sort of. And you want to do IR, and then 2 years later, boom, completely changed on CS, right? And so going with sports or anything like that, it's exactly that. It's sort of find out what your major passion is, go towards that, because that's kind of what you want your life goal to be. Like, you want to work. I mean, it's really cheesy, but like in the sense of like do what you love and love what you do. Like, that's what you have to find, and everything, all the experiences around that help you find that thing, and help enrich that life that you're going to have, and make what you're doing more fun and more interesting and more enjoyable. That's kind of the best way I can say. So yeah, do it, but have fun.
I can't tell you, I mean, this course I know you've taken 20 in the past, but this, you've said, as something I've mentioned, I've had in the class is, there's a motto I know that Robin is in your office as well. Remember, it's not what you know, it's what, who you know, and it's who you know will give you more and more opportunity. It will give you so many opportunities that you'll never imagine. So you can get that both working on projects with CS and also within hobbies as well. And I can't tell you how many opportunities I've actually had with just random people I played with over the years by playing golf. Just to let you know. Next question, I know.
For something like very different, I was just wondering, like, outside of when you're getting a new job, how do you decide when to learn like a new language or library? Because you say you have a framework for things and then you know where those things fit. But like when you decide there's this whole new thing and it's now useful enough that I need to go know it.
Two different things like make that trigger where I'll go learn something. One is just like curiosity or excitement. If it's just like sounds cool enough, I'll just want to go play with it. And the other one is what Soha was talking about, where you start to realize that you have like a hole in your understanding, and it kind of like gnaws at you because you're probably someone who likes to like understand things, and that hole will kind of like be like, man, I should really learn about that thing. And then you're like, I can't believe I don't know about that still. And then someday you'll finally be like, okay, it's really time to sit down and learn a thing about that. And I will probably do that. I learn best by doing a project and picking up a thing and trying to do something in whatever I'm trying to learn. So that's how I would probably like address that hole.
So one thing you have to remember is that once you're out of school, you're no longer taking classes. So it's I don't know who said it, but like education is wasted on the youth in the sense that like when you're taking classes, you don't realize how good you have it, but it's like you're forced to learn, right? It's sort of like this is what you have to do, and it sort of becomes a have to, and it becomes a negative thing. Whereas once you're out of school and you're doing your job or whatever the case may be, learning becomes fun because now you're doing it because you want to, which is it's a very different feeling as opposed to like here's a problem that I have to do because it's due tomorrow and I'm going to get graded on it. When you're out, it's sort of I'm going to do this because I'm genuinely interested in it. I'm not going to waste my time on anything else because I don't have the time to waste on it. But like if I'm going to do it, I enjoy it. And so it's less that you're learning for the sake of I need to know this for a job. You're learning for the sake of learning. So it's like I really want to know about this, and that's why you go do it. At least that's what it's been for me.
So generally speaking, when I'm interested in learning something deeply, it's because I'm excited and interested in what a new technology or something offers. I've heard about it somewhere, anywhere, it doesn't matter. And so I'll go actively look for it. When I generally learn more broadly and just need to have a general sense of something, it's sort of this vague sense of insecurity or becoming behind the times. It's like, oh God, what does everyone else know that I don't know? Like, am I becoming, a dinosaur? Like, what do I need to know? Do I need to brush up on my functional programming? Lisp isn't cool anymore. What is it? Java 8, Java 8. So, you know, it's some of both, but you basically identify holes in your knowledge and then you go actively seek to fill them to whatever degree is appropriate for what your goals are.
So I was actually kind of struck by everybody saying, or both of you, it's like I have to do it to kind of learn it. And I think what happens maybe as we get older is, you know, and when you have that mental frame going for you, then you're able to say, well, I don't really need to do it to learn it. You know, the example that you gave about the difference between the two languages, right? It's like, oh, you know, I was able in my mind to actually figure out what the difference is, and I was happy and satisfied, and I found a place in my framework to store that piece of information, and I didn't have to go off and learn it. So, you know, again, sometimes you don't want to take the time out to learn something, and the return is very low. And that return could have just been sort of a mental exercise for you to kind of recoup the value.
Sorry, I'm going to come back and say one more thing on this. The other really good way to learn something is do it for your work. And so if there's something that you are have on your mind that you want to learn, see if you can find an opportunity in your workplace where somebody else is doing that, or there's a need for it and nobody's doing it, and teach yourself just enough to be able to say to whoever might say, yeah, Alden, go work on that thing. That you know something about blank, and then when, it might not happen immediately, but at some point they'll be like, man, we really need someone to work on that. And you'll be like, oh, I know a little bit about that. And they'll be like, okay, sure, go try that out. And then that's the moment where you actually will really learn a lot, because then you're doing it for your job. 40 plus hours a week, and then it really becomes something you know deeply.
Question someone has? Oh, I got a couple.
I'll ask this. I just had a quick question. I might be an outlier here, but I'm not a traditional CS student. I'm a human factors student. I was sort of curious, what recommendations do you guys have for students that want to get into CS roles, but maybe in a more business or user-focused roles, sort of more PMing, product, program? What recommendations do you have for sort of circumventing the Comp 40, Comp 105 side of things, and still getting to the tech role, to be honest?
So I'd say that the more CS you can take, the better your understanding and empathy for the engineers will be. And product managers or project managers who have an understanding of sort of the technical opportunities, first and foremost, and technical limitations sort of secondarily, are relatively few. So, you know, PMs who understand the tech side are extremely valuable to a business. And so if you can demonstrate that ability, you know, you'll certainly find yourself working on a lot of cool and interesting projects.
I just want to answer this because I think it's a really, really important question. Right now, we have focused on CS versus, you know, designers, right? I mean, it's a profession. You know, you don't have to be a code developer, but you could be a designer. I was in California in Silicon Valley, and I met with one of our alums who works at Google X. And, you know, small chat, this and that, and then he's like confessing, I hated Comp 40, I hated 80, which was 105 now, and he hated every comp sci class we had to offer. But, you know, he knew that that's where his love is, the technology, but he really wanted to be a designer at heart. You know, he wanted to be a human factors person, and this was his passion. And, you know, he was amazing. He's really, really good. I mean, he's at Google X, you know, they only have 2,000 employees, so, you know, he's working on the contact lens project, you know, that measures the biomarkers. So, you know, he ended up sort of taking the CS path, plowing through it. Can't tell you much about his grades, but let's say he wasn't going to MIT grad school. But, you know, again, he managed to kind of weave through the CS major and come out ahead. At Tufts, though, we have a bunch of options. You know, you can kind of design your own major. You know, so if you really, really dislike the comp sci courses and you're like, no, I cannot suffer through 111 and 112, but, you know, rethink about your major, talk to your advisor. The Gordon Institute offers lots and lots of classes. You might be able to weave like an engineering degree, engineering science is what we call it, that has things that you like. And you know, typically when I have somebody who comes in and says, I want your advice, you know, I'm thinking about engineering science, I cringe because I don't know if that person is like, okay, my grades are the lowest ever and I can't make it through any major in the School of Engineering and I want to be an engineering science major, or if this person is really innovative and thinking about what they really, really are passionate about and they're putting together this, you know, collection of courses that will enable them to do exactly what they want. So talk to your advisor and think about that.
One way I've seen, so there's no shortcuts, but two paths I've seen people take without being like really, really strong CS fundamentals toward getting like some sort of product managery, product design, like talking to customers a lot, that sort of thing. One is being some sort of front-end developer, either on some mobile devices or on a web thing, and you don't really, like you will be a better one of those developers if you had Comp 40 under your belt, but you could still do that without that. And then through that role, start trying to take more opportunities to talk to your customers and to be thinking about the entire UX of the product. And then people will start realizing that this is what your strong suit is, and then maybe you can do more and more of that and less of the coding. Another way I've seen it happen, and this is maybe even a slower track, is people who get hired at a company to do a support job, and then they're talking to customers nonstop all day about all the problems that the customers are having, and then they end up having a really good understanding of what's wrong with the product, what needs to happen, and what are like the rough spots. And then if that person also has the sort of mind about how to like go about making a UX and how to design a product, then sometimes they can transition from that role.
I do want to add, there's two things. So again, I mean, this is the purpose of a panel like this. I mean, because generally speaking, most people are underinformed about what options that they have. I mean, that's the value of a panel like this. I would like to add two things. Number one, knowing what you don't want to do is just as valuable as knowing what you want to do. I mean, that's important. But number two is if you know what you want to do, but it's not particularly, for example, the perfect example, project management, okay? Project management, let's say that this, or entrepreneurship, another perfect example. If there's not too much information, if you're not getting that out of the computer science, if you're not getting out of any curriculum, what the next thing that you should do, and this goes back to, just go back to the networking thing. And I give you a perfect example. I have an advisee, she's going to be graduating early. I mean, I know her well enough to understand that she probably wants to go into more of a project management role. And she actually asked me, is there a way that you can hook I know you know people, do you know anyone that does project management? And yeah, I absolutely do. I know someone, we have a dear former student of ours who's a project management at so-and-so company, at so-and-so. I'm not going to give the name of the company. So what I did was, I made the introduction between my former student and my advisee. I said, just want to let you know that she's really interested in project management. Can you bounce back, I just want to make an introduction. So they had, from what I understand, they had a long conversation over Skype a couple days ago. So that stuff is important too. All right, we got a question.
Yes, it is.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. I was in London studying abroad, so good advice. Okay, so this is for the startup people. I wanted to know, Tufts does a really good job of bringing larger companies a lot of times to the career fair, and startups obviously can't make it to career fairs at every union college. So do you guys have any advice on networking with startups and trying to find startups who are looking for developers and things like that?
I mean, I'm going to be walking with the mic, but I can certainly, one thing I will certainly never forget with Alden. I mean, when you were a senior here, you hooked a lot of students up going to Greenhorn Connect. And that was, there's a lot of things I've heard you've done a lot for us, but anyone want to say anything?
Sure. So, so your question is finding startups, right? So, there are a number of different ways that you can go about that. You can go attend various either hackathons or area events. You can sort of look at Mass Innovation Nights, or you can go hang out at some of the CIC, Cambridge Innovation Center. There are a number of incubators, and so oftentimes they'll have these sort of open events. You can just show up and sort of, chat with people. They'll be more than interested to tell you about what their company does and why they're so cool and all of that sort of stuff. And sort of touching upon this and sort of the previous comment, I worked at small companies a lot when I came out of school, a lot of startups, and to sort of the Ming's point, it was, and I'm just sharing this, I don't have really a perspective or recommendation one way or another, but my network was very small at that point. It took going to a larger company like TripAdvisor for me to really build out my network. And now at this point, I've been there for 4 years, I've seen a lot of people go to startups, so now I have a network where I have a lot of people in a lot of different companies that, should I be so interested, I can go look, I can see what the company's doing, I have someone who can make an introduction. Maybe you have someone like Ming who can, make an introduction for you. He sort of knows where Tufts alums have gone, and we have a couple of people on startups here, so they might know sort of the industry as well. But there are a bunch of events that you can go to and just talk.
We also have a LinkedIn page for our CS alums, and you could go look through it and see, who's doing what, and you might find people through that.
That was good advice about finding companies that are in incubators. If you want to, it means depends what stage, but if you want like a really, really small company, a lot of those are in some sort of incubator, or maybe they're going to go do some pitch at like a pitch night or something like that. So the main incubators I can think of around here is Mass Challenge, which is down in like the Seaport area, and then there's Dog Patch, which is in Kendall, and there's Techstars, which is also in Kendall. You can go, they have like the list of companies on their websites, and you can go look up each one of those companies, and if they seem exciting, you're gonna have to reach out to them and basically tell them how you could be helpful to them, because they really don't have time to go running around chasing you.
Start your own.
Yeah.
Oh.
Business schools. There are a lot of business schools around here. They like startups, and they have incubators. Like Harvard has iLab. It's their own incubator space. That's actually where we started. MIT Sloan's down the road. They also have startups that they started there. So go talk to those people, because it's a lot of times there are business people, and they need tech people to help them. So if you want to get in early, that's usually a good place.
We got one, we got a few questions here, but we don't want to, because I know everyone got, family and priorities, so we don't want to keep everyone here too long. We'll ask one more, we got one more question.
So there's a ton of information out there for finding a job if you're an undergrad. And if you read enough, you'll start to hear the same thing over and over again. If you decide to sort of stick with academia and get your PhD and become an expert in something, and you want to get one of those jobs that requires a PhD and is probably a research job with some really cool technology, how does that change things?
I think we heard Patrick say his advisor played a role in helping you find a job. And I think that's, a lot of times that's what happens when you're a grad student. If I was supervising somebody for their PhD, I've worked with them for 5 years, I've invested a lot of effort into that person. So there's a lot of things that I do to actually groom that person to make sure that they get the job that they want. For example, if you're interested in academic research in systems biology, which is the research area that I currently work in, it's very typical that people, after finishing a PhD, they go get a postdoc. So, I'm grooming this person to really make sure they know everybody who's anybody in this field, so that way when they are close to finishing, they know person so-and-so from Harvard Statistics, and they know this person from MIT, and they know this person from Stanford, and they're ending up getting a very nice, prestigious postdoc. So that's one option. The other option is you get a lot of companies that are interested in particular skill sets, and you know people at these companies. And again, the whole time through those 5 years, you're introducing your student, making sure that they're well known, they're well established. And if your advisor is not doing that for you, then you need to kind of rethink things. So, and I think there's a push on the career center this year from the School of Engineering to pay more attention to placing graduate students. So I don't know what's going to happen with that, but it's cooking too.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of companies have things for PhDs level people. Again, I don't know what your background is and what your research thing is, but generally that goes more into kind of the algorithmic side of things. So I mean, one of my friends that I went to grad school with, his work was on, he was a computation, so theory computation. He worked on basically traveling salesman's problem. This is basically kind of what he worked on, and kind of basically that area of stuff. He ended up working at Apple when Apple started Apple Maps. Yes, you can take a guess as to why he was working there. Obviously, he couldn't say. But there are always things like that. So depending on what your research is, even if it's completely theoretical or completely applied, there are always people looking for what you do. Because so again, like I said earlier, academia is 5, 10, 15 years ahead of industry, just because that's the nature of the beast. So as soon as industry sees, oh, here's a problem I have, and you've tackled this problem, or thought about it, they'll be interested in you. If you want to go more the industry route, more if you want to go more the academic route, then I'll have to defer to you because I skipped out on academia.
So, I guess we can't thank you enough for each and every one of you for being here tonight. I know a lot of people have come and gone, but of course it's pretty late right now, and we understand that your time is valuable. It certainly has meant a lot to us that you're all here. So thank you again so much for being here. And so we're going to spend some time closing remarks.
I actually had an announcement to make. I didn't know you were going to turn it for closing remarks. The announcement that I want to make is back to this product design, kind of business end of things. Actually, the Gordon Institute this weekend, they're having like a 2-day kind of workshop on product development. And a lot of it, actually, the reason that they're holding it at that particular time is the department has been having conversations with them on how to get more synergy between computer science students and entrepreneurship training, if you will. So they're having this 2-day workshop, and a lot of it is here's product development, kind of how it works, and here's a bunch of brainstorming sessions. Maybe you'll meet some people there, and when you go to the hackathon, you kind of have given some thought about what you want to do for products. So.
I just have one general kind of like larger thing. So there's like lots of little pieces here, but I think if you are a person who comes into a situation, looks at it, figures out what needs to happen, figure out what you need to do to get that done, go and then do it and complete that, and then make sure you communicate what you're doing along the way to the people around you, then people will be very impressed with you, give you more responsibility, and you will learn a bunch because you will be seeking out new opportunities and having to learn those new things. So I think if you do that, then pretty much the rest of this stuff all follows.
Closing remarks. Actually, I should have probably said this in the beginning. Sometimes they ask me sort of what is the right expectations of what kind of internships you get as you move along your undergraduate degree. With 11 and 15, it's really hard to get a very, very cool job. It's just really hard because you're competing against people that have been in school for 2 years or maybe 3 years. With 40 and 160 and 105 under your belt, you should be positioned to get a really, really cool internship. But you have to work really hard at making sure that you apply early, figure out your contacts, work your network, work the alumni network to make sure that you land the job that you want. So, I was in the Silicon Valley last summer talking to an alum who's a VC, and he was saying how, he loves the Tufts students because, once they're past the 40, 105, he could place them in any startup company and they do really, really well. So I just wanted to set that up for you, or think about that mentally. If you're a sophomore, you got 11 and 15, this is the year that you're going to get a really cool internship. And you're gonna set yourself up to go back maybe to the same company or a different company and gonna get another internship after your junior year. And that puts you in a really, really good position for landing the job that you want once you're done with your 4-year degree.
And what job is it that you want? You know, setting goals for yourself and revising those goals as you go, I think is very important. So, you know, your career isn't going to be a straight path. It's not, you know, a single line up to the top. You know, you can make some swerves, you can take some detours, you know, nothing, you can recover from anything. If you find that you have gaps in your knowledge when you get out in the industry and you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do, you can learn those things. So you can always pick things up. So I wouldn't shy away from experiences or opportunities that present themselves because you have to do X, Y, or Z or check boxes. You know, I'd encourage you not to worry about checking boxes. You know, don't chase money. Go after the opportunities that are right for you. Have passion for what you do, and everything else will take care of itself. Because in the end, you'll be successful. You'll, you know, earn a good living. You'll be very interested in what you do, and you'll ultimately be successful. So, to the point of trying new things and not being afraid to fail, I will make one plug in that TripAdvisor is having a coding competition. So you can try it out, see how you do. Tufts has excellent CS fundamentals, so as a fellow jumbo, I would love to see Tufts take the top prize for it. So if you're interested in more details, come see me. I'll be happy to tell you more about it.
And I'll just close by saying, stop worrying about your career. Career is only part of your life. It's figure out what you want to do in the long term, right? The career is part of it, right? So yes, you want to find that good job. Yes, you want to do the right thing, but you know, you will probably have a family. You probably will have a house. You probably maybe want to live somewhere else. Maybe you want to, you know, there are a lot of things other than work that is important. You work during the day, but that shouldn't be who you are. And so, yes, you know, pay a lot of attention to what you're doing and try to find the right job for you, but find the right environment is probably more important. You know, that environment includes where you are, who you're with, the people, the problem you're working on. It could be the company or, you know, what type of company, but try to figure that out. And the job will, like you said, kind of follow. It's sort of, you end up doing the job, hopefully, because that's what you like to do, and it helps you do the rest of the things in your life. Because, you know, life should be fun.
So we all hope that the time that you spent with us tonight has been really, really valuable and helpful for you. We really hope that tonight's session was not only helpful for you, but if you have any feedback for any of us, feel free email us or come talk to us in media, you know, after this. But without much ado, thank you so much, Alden. Thank you so much.